The sound came first. The crash of glass, the shriek of metal against tile. Then the silence, thick and stunned. In the middle of St. Aldan Academy's most prestigious classroom stood Lila Donovan, 8 years old, barefoot, trembling, her uniform splattered with paint and fury. Around her, desks lay overturned like fallen soldiers, notebooks torn apart, pages floating through the air like white birds that had forgotten how to fly. The teacher, pale and shaking, stood frozen by the door, a resignation letter clutched in her hand. She'd lasted 2 days. "You can't make me like you!" Lila screamed, her voice sharp, too big for her small frame. She hurled a handful of colored pencils across the floor, the sound echoing like gunfire. "I don't want another teacher! I want my mom!" The words tore through the room, slicing through the fragile composure of every watching child. Gasps rose, whispers rustled. She said her mom, and still Lila stood in the wreckage like a soldier refusing to surrender. Her tiny hands shook, not from rage, but from grief she didn't know how to name. The teacher took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Lila, please!" "Go ahead, quick like the others." She climbed onto her desk, her knees wobbling. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Everyone leaves! Everyone always leaves!" The room went still. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. When the teacher finally turned and walked out, shoulders sagging, eyes full of helpless pity, Lila's defiance cracked. The markers she still clutched fell from her hands and rolled across the floor, one by one, until only the sound of her uneven breathing filled the room. Down the hall, Principal Marrow was already speaking in hushed tones with a man in a tailored suit. Dylan Price, personal assistant to Ethan Donovan, the billionaire father whose empire reached further than his patience. "That's 17, Marrow whispered, glancing toward the classroom door. 17 teachers in 3 months. The board is threatening expulsion, and Child Services has been notified." Dylan rubbed his temples. "God help us," he murmured. "Mr. Donovan is already unraveling." Inside the classroom, Lila climbed down from her desk and crouched among the mess she had made. For the first time, the silence hurt worse than the shouting. She hugged her knees to her chest, whispering into the void, "You said you'd never leave." But no one answered. Somewhere beyond the walls of the academy, in a small apartment across the city, a woman named Clara Reed sat at her kitchen table, a steaming cup of tea forgotten beside her laptop. The glow of the screen reflected in her tired eyes as she read an unusual job listing. Private educator wanted, must be patient, resilient, and unafraid of emotional challenges. Experience with trauma preferred. Her pulse quickened. Her fingertips hovered over the keyboard. She had seen pain like this before, not in children she had taught, but in the mirror she faced each morning. She closed the laptop gently and whispered to herself, "She doesn't need control. She needs someone who remembers what it feels like to be lost." And somewhere, in the wreckage of a broken classroom, an 8-year-old girl wiped her tears with paint-stained fingers, unaware that her story was about to change, not through punishment, not through fear, but through the quiet arrival of someone who refused to walk away. High above the restless pulse of Manhattan, Ethan Donovan sat in his glass-walled office, a man who could command markets, but not his own life. The skyline glittered before him, towers of ambition, windows reflecting wealth, yet none of it could fill the hollow behind his ribs. On the mahogany desk before him, his phone vibrated once, twice. The screen flashed, "Principal Marrow, urgent." He didn't need to answer to know what it meant. Another teacher gone. Another headline waiting to happen. Across the office, Dylan Price, his loyal assistant, pretended to read through a stack of papers. "It's the school again, sir," he said softly. "Number 17. Ethan leaned back, pressing his fingertips against his temples. 17, he repeated, voice low, frayed. God help me. Silence stretched between them, heavy as the city smog. "She's only 8, Dylan ventured. "Still just a child." "She's not just anything," Ethan cut in, his tone brittle. "She's a storm, a mirror I can't look into." He rose from his chair and crossed to the floor-to-ceiling window. From here, the city looked small, the traffic, the lights, the people, all reduced to motion and noise. But grief had a way of shrinking everything until only guilt remained. 6 months ago, his life had been perfect. Amelia had been the warmth that balanced his edges, the laughter that filled every silent space. Their daughter, Lila, was her reflection, bright, fearless, alive. Then came that night. The rain, the phone call, the sound of everything breaking at once. Since then, Ethan had been a man performing normalcy. Meetings, deals, smiles, all hollow. The empire still stood, but its foundation was made of ashes. "She blames me, Dylan," he said quietly, not turning from the window. "She doesn't say it, but I see it, in her eyes. Every time she looks at me, it's like she's asking why I didn't stop the car, why I didn't stop the rain, why I didn't stop fate." Dylan's throat tightened. He had seen Ethan crush rivals with a single sentence, charm entire boards with a glance. But now the man before him looked fragile, a skyscraper built on sorrow. The phone buzzed again, a new message, this time from his lawyer. The preview line read, "Media leak confirmed. CPS notified." Ethan's pulse quickened. "They'll come for her," he murmured. "They'll say I'm unfit, that money can't buy love, that she's better off somewhere else." He sank into his chair, the weight of those words pressing into his bones. For a moment, even breathing felt expensive. Dylan hesitated, then stepped forward, holding out a single envelope. "I found something, a candidate for the position, not the usual resume." Ethan's brow furrowed. "We've had experts, therapists, PhDs, none of them lasted." "She's different," Dylan said. "No Ivy League degrees, no fancy references, just this." He placed the letter on the desk. Ethan stared at it for a moment before opening it. The handwriting was neat but unpolished, every stroke human, imperfect, alive. "Your daughter doesn't need another teacher. She needs someone who remembers what it feels like when the world collapses. I was that child once. I survived. If you'll let me, I'll help her survive too." The words pierced deeper than any report or recommendation ever had. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something stir inside him. Not hope exactly, but a flicker of possibility. He read the letter again, slower this time, as if afraid it would vanish. "Who is she?" he asked. "Clara Reed," Dylan replied. 32, former foster child. 8 years of experience teaching at inner-city schools. She's seen things, survived things, sir." Ethan set the letter down, fingers tracing its edge. "And she wants this job, after everything she's read?" "She doesn't see it as a job," Dylan said simply. "She sees it as purpose." Outside, the city lights blinked like distant stars, unreachable, indifferent. Ethan Donovan, master of the tangible world, sat there surrounded by the intangible, guilt, love, fear, and a desperate prayer that someone might reach the daughter he could not. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost a confession. He said, "Call her, before I lose what's left of my family." The Donovan estate shimmered in the late afternoon sun, a fortress of glass and pale stone set against the quiet stretch of Westchester Hills. The gates opened soundlessly, revealing a long drive bordered by manicured trees, perfect symmetry guarding imperfect lives. Clara Reed adjusted her navy blazer as she stepped from the car, her heart steady though her pulse betrayed her. She had walked into harder rooms than this, courtrooms, foster homes, classrooms trembling with violence, but nothing prepared her for the silence of this place, a silence that didn't come from peace but from grief. The front doors swung open, and there he was, Ethan Donovan, tall, composed, and exhausted in a way money couldn't hide. The faint stubble on his jaw, the undone collar of a once perfect shirt, the eyes of a man still chasing ghosts. "Miss Reed," he greeted, voice low, controlled. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for having me," she replied. Her tone was even, gentle, carrying a warmth that slipped through the cold air of the mansion. He led her inside. Marble floors gleamed beneath chandeliers that cast fractured light across walls lined with expensive art. Yet Clara's eyes drifted elsewhere, to the family photographs on the staircase. A laughing woman in a yellow dress, a toddler on her lap, a man behind them, frozen mid-smile. "You're not looking at the art," he observed quietly. "Art fades, but love doesn't. At least, it shouldn't." Something flickered in his gaze, surprise perhaps, or the faint memory of hope. They reached the library, a cathedral of books in amber light. Dylan Price waited by the window, then slipped out silently, leaving the two alone. He gestured toward a seat. "Before we begin," he said, "I want you to understand the situation. 17 teachers have walked out. Lila is difficult. She's angry, defiant. She's grieving," Clara interrupted softly. He froze. He wasn't used to being interrupted, especially not by someone seeking employment. Yet there was no arrogance in her tone, only truth. Clara leaned forward, resting her hands on her knees. "Mr. Donovan, I don't have a degree in child psychology. I don't have polished answers or perfect theories. What I do have is experience. 8 years teaching children who scream because silence hurts too much. And before that, 18 years trying to survive the same silence myself." He studied her, jaw tightening. "Why this job? Why my daughter?" "Because she's me," Clara said simply. "I know what it's like to believe everyone leaves." The honesty hit him like impact. For the first time in months, someone wasn't talking about his daughter as a case, a file, a burden, but as a human being. He exhaled slowly. "What makes you think you'll last longer than the others?" Clara's lips curved into a faint, almost weary smile. "Because I'm not here to control her. I'm here to see her. And children who feel seen don't have to scream so loud." He turned his head slightly, hiding the way her words landed. No psychologist, no therapist had ever said it that plainly. Then, a crash upstairs, the sharp shatter of glass. He winced, already half rising. "She's at it again." But Clara stood first, calm, grounded. "Then let's not waste time talking about her. Let me meet her." He blinked. "Now?" "Now," she answered, eyes steady. "You've tried everything else. Let's try presence." And without waiting for permission, Clara Reed walked toward the sound of chaos, the sound that had broken 17 others, ready to face the storm herself. The upstairs corridor smelt faintly of lavender and dust, the kind of scent that lingered in rooms where laughter used to live. A trail of destruction led the way. A toppled lamp, a picture frame shattered across the floor, scribbles on wallpaper spelling the word no over and over again. At the very end of the hall, behind a closed door, came the sound of something breaking, porcelain this time. Ethan Donovan took a step forward, his voice tight. "She's in her room. Let me—" Clara raised a hand gently. "Let me go first." He hesitated. No one had ever said that before. Every teacher, every specialist had always waited for him to take control, to threaten, to bribe, to fix. But Clara didn't move like the others. She walked as if she already understood the language of chaos. When she opened the door, the air fit her, heavy, charged, filled with a silence that trembled. Lila Donovan stood on her bed, her small body coiled like a wire ready to snap. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her hair wild, and in her hand she clutched a delicate snow globe. Inside, a tiny ballerina spun in an eternal dance beneath fake snow. "Don't come closer," Lila snapped. "I mean it." Clara didn't move. "That's a beautiful snow globe," she said softly. "It was my mom's," Lila hissed. Her voice cracked. "And if you try to tell me what to do, I'll smash it, just like I smashed everything else." From the doorway, Ethan flinched, instinctively stepping forward, but Clara turned her head slightly, a silent request, "Trust me." She took one small step closer. "You know what happens if you smash it?" Lila's eyes flashed. "It's gone, like her." Clara nodded, slow, deliberate. "Yes, but you'd lose the only thing that still carries her touch. And when you lose the last thing that holds her memory, the pain doesn't disappear. It just has nowhere left to live except inside you." For a moment, the girl's fingers trembled. The glass caught the light, scattering fragile rainbows across her tear-streaked face. "You don't know anything about me," Lila whispered. Clara's voice was barely above a breath. "You're right. I don't know all of you yet, but I know what it's like to stand in a room full of broken things, hoping someone will see that the most broken piece is me." Something in Lila's posture faltered, the defiance collapsing under the weight of being understood. Her eyes flicked toward her father, then back to Clara. "Everyone leaves," she said again, softer this time. "They all leave." Clara shook her head. "Not me." The silence that followed was so fragile, it felt like sound itself was holding its breath. Then slowly, Lila lowered the snow globe from above her head. Her small fingers clutched it to her chest instead of throwing it. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, afraid even to breathe. He had never seen anyone reach his daughter like this, not through authority, not through money, not through pleading. But Clara didn't move like the others. She walked as if she already understood the language of chaos. "That's a beautiful snow globe," she said softly. "It was my mom's," Lila hissed. Her voice cracked. "And if you try to tell me what to do, I'll smash it, just like I smashed everything else." From the doorway, Ethan flinched, instinctively stepping forward, but Clara turned her head slightly, a silent request, "Trust me." She took one small step closer. "You know what happens if you smash it?" Lila's eyes flashed. "It's gone, like her." Clara nodded, slow, deliberate. "Yes, but you'd lose the only thing that still carries her touch. And when you lose the last thing that holds her memory, the pain doesn't disappear. It just has nowhere left to live except inside you." For a moment, the girl's fingers trembled. The glass caught the light, scattering fragile rainbows across her tear-streaked face. "You don't know anything about me," Lila whispered. Clara's voice was barely above a breath. "You're right. I don't know all of you yet, But I know what it's like to stand in a room full of broken things, hoping someone will see that the most broken piece is me." Something in Lila's posture faltered, the defiance collapsing under the weight of being understood. Her eyes flicked toward her father, then back to Clara. "Everyone leaves," she said again, softer this time. "They all leave." Clara shook her head. "Not me." The silence that followed was so fragile it felt like sound itself was holding its breath. Then slowly, Lila lowered the snow globe from above her head. Her small fingers clutched it to her chest instead of throwing it. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, afraid even to breathe. He had never seen anyone reach his daughter like this, not through authority, not through money, not through pleading. But Clara didn't move like the others. She walked as if she already understood the language of chaos. Downstairs, the world was still the same. Headlines, gossip, the hum of judgment waiting outside. But inside that room, amid the ruin and quiet, the healing had begun. By the time dawn crept through the high windows of the Donovan mansion, the storm outside had already begun. Headlines screamed from every corner of the internet. "Billionaire's daughter out of control." "Donovan heiress drives out 17 teachers. Is she a danger to others?" Ethan sat at the dining table, the phone buzzing endlessly beside a mug of untouched coffee. His tie hung loose, his eyes were hollow. Across from him, Lila pushed pieces of pancake across her plate, pretending not to hear the soft vibration of notifications. The front page of C News glowed from the tablet between them. A blurred image of her daughter mid-outburst, paint streaked across her face, mouth open, mid-scream. "She's a child," Ethan muttered, voice low, shaking. "They're turning her into a headline." Clara Reed, seated beside them, kept her tone calm but firm. "That's what they do when they don't understand pain. They call it misbehavior. It's easier than calling it grief." Before he could respond, a knock echoed through the mansion. Not loud, official, deliberate. Dylan appeared in the doorway. "It's her," he said quietly. "Child Protective Services." Ethan's stomach turned to ice. For all his wealth, he felt powerless. At the door stood Miss Hart, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and the posture of someone who had seen too many fractured families. Clipboard in hand, she introduced herself with quiet authority. "Mr. Donovan," she said, stepping into the foyer. "After multiple reports, I've been assigned to evaluate your home and your daughter's welfare. This won't be brief." Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. It was Clara who spoke first. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Please, come in. Spend as much time as you need. You'll see the truth for yourself." Miss Hart's eyes lingered on her, curious but cautious. "And you are?" "Clara Reed, Lila's educator." The woman raised an eyebrow. "You're new." "Yes," Clara said simply, "but I plan to stay." They found Lila in the sunroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her snow globe beside her, pretending to read a book upside down. The sunlight haloed her hair, but the shadows under her eyes betrayed sleeplessness. When Miss Hart entered, the girl's body stiffened. "You're here to take me away." Ethan froze. "Sweetheart, no, she's—" But Clara knelt down beside Lila, her voice soft, unwavering. "She's here to understand. You don't have to hide who you are. Just show her the truth." The social worker observed quietly through the day, the small, ordinary moments that told a larger story. Breakfast cleanup, Lila spilling juice, then giggling when Clara guided her to wipe it up herself. Study time, Lila finishing her spelling words, whispering each letter like a victory. Playtime, building a tower of blocks with Clara until it stood taller than both of them. Still, Miss Hart took notes without expression, her pen scratching like a clock, counting down. When the day waned, the air thick with unspoken fear, Lila approached her visitor holding the snow globe tight. "My mom gave me this. I break things sometimes. I yell. I make people leave. "But Clara, she doesn't leave." The pen stopped moving. Lila's lip trembled. "She says I'm not broken, just hurting. Is that true?" For a long moment, Miss Hart said nothing. Then she closed the folder gently. "It's true," she said at last, "and it matters." Ethan's shoulders sagged, his breath leaving him in a rush. Miss Hart looked between the three of them, the grieving father, the steady teacher, the trembling child, and spoke with quiet weight. "I don't see neglect here. I see pain. But I also see people willing to face it. That counts for more than you think." Relief rippled through the room, fragile but real. Then she added, "However, given the media attention and prior reports, supervision will continue. One visit isn't enough. You're under observation now, Mr. Donovan. One mistake and the decision could change." As she left, the house felt heavier again. Ethan sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "They'll be watching us," he whispered, "every move." Clara placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then we give them something worth watching." She turned to Lila, whose snow globe glimmered in the fading light. "We'll show them what love looks like after it's been broken." And in that quiet, trembling room, the promise began to take root, fragile as glass, strong as truth. Evening had settled gently over the Donovan mansion, the kind of calm that felt almost suspicious after so much chaos. The smell of pancakes and melted butter drifted through the kitchen. Lila stood on a stool, her tongue peeking between her lips as she flipped one with shaky hands. Clara Reed guided her from behind, steady and patient, her laughter a soft rhythm against the clatter of dishes. For a brief, fragile hour, the world outside didn't exist. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, once, twice, a flood of notifications. He frowned, wiping his hands on a towel, and picked it up. The color drained from his face before he could speak. "Clara," he whispered, showing her the screen. "Breaking news, exclusive footage from inside the Donovan mansion." The video autoplayed. A grainy clip, Lila on her bed, clutching the snow globe, screaming, "Everyone leaves! I'll smash it, just like I smashed everything else!" Cut. Silence. Then a blurred close-up of her crying face, frozen mid-scream. There was no context, no sound of Clara's calm voice, no mention of grief or loss, just 8 seconds of chaos, stripped of meaning. Ethan's hands shook. Where did they get this? Dylan appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Someone leaked it, maybe one of the teachers before Clara. It's everywhere, Ethan. Millions of views already." The room fell silent. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator filled the air. Then Lila spoke, barely audible. "That's me." She stared at the screen, eyes wide. "They hate me now." Her small hands trembled, pancake batter dripping onto the counter. "They'll take me away," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They'll say I'm bad, just like everyone says." "Sweetheart, no," Ethan started, but she backed away, clutching the edge of the counter. "I told you," she cried, sobs tearing through her chest. "I ruin everything. Everyone leaves because I ruin everything." Ethan froze, helpless, a man who could stop stock markets, but not a single child's heartbreak. Then Clara moved. She knelt in front of Lila, gently lifting her chin until their eyes met. Her voice was low, fierce, trembling with something deeper than calm, truth. "Look at me, Lila." Through tears, the girl did. "They showed the world a lie, but we're not going to hide. We'll show them the truth. We'll show you." Lila shook her head violently. "No one believes me. They only see the bad parts." "Then we'll make them see everything else. The laughter, the courage, the girl who still makes pancakes, even when the world tries to burn her down." Ethan stared at her, bewildered. "You're talking about going public? Clara, this isn't a charity campaign. This is my daughter's life." Clara stood, her gaze unwavering. Exactly. And it's time she takes it back. He opened his mouth to protest, but the conviction in her voice stopped him cold. Let them film her healing instead of her breaking. Let them see who she really is, not who they decided she should be. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, clouds gathering over the manicured hills like judgment closing in. Lila sniffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "You mean I can tell them?" "Yes," Clara whispered, "in your own words." Ethan looked between them, his daughter's fragile courage and Clara's unshakable faith, and something inside him gave way. "All right," he said, voice rough, "then let's do it right. If the world wants to watch us fall, they can watch us rise." Lila managed a tiny, trembling smile. "Even if I cry?" Clara smiled back, "Especially if you cry." And as the storm gathered over the city, 3 souls stood in that kitchen, a father, a teacher, and a child, not preparing for war, but for truth. Outside, the cameras waited. Inside, a little girl was about to take her first step toward the light. The auditorium buzzed with noise, the restless hum of reporters, the clicks of cameras, the low murmur of judgment gathering like a tide. Every seat was filled, parents, teachers, journalists. The air itself seemed to lean forward, hungry. At the center of it all sat a small table beneath harsh white lights. Ethan Donovan, stiff in his suit, his hands clenched tight. Clara Reed beside him, calm as a steady flame. And between them, Lila, clutching her snow globe like a heartbeat made of glass. At the long table facing them sat members of the school board, their expressions neutral in the way that only fear of public scrutiny can make neutral. Beside them, Ms. Hart from Child Protective Services shuffled her papers with the caution of someone who understood how fragile the truth could be. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "Mr. Donovan, this hearing is being held to assess the safety and stability of your daughter's environment. The school reports repeated outbursts, multiple resignations, and, most recently, a public scandal. We need assurance that Lila is receiving proper care and that she is not a danger to herself or others." Ethan's mouth opened, ready to defend, to argue, to fight. But a gentle touch stopped him. Clara's hand resting on his arm, her quiet voice, "Let her speak." He turned toward her, startled. "She's just a child." "Exactly. Let them hear her as one." Lila's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the snow globe until her knuckles turned white. The ballerina inside shimmered faintly under the lights. When she stood, the room seemed to inhale. Cameras adjusted. The whispers died. Her voice, when it came, was small, but it carried. "They call me broken." The sentence sliced through the air like a bell tolling. She swallowed hard. "They call me dangerous, impossible. But I'm not those things. I'm just sad." A ripple of silence. "My mom died 6 months ago, and I didn't know what to do with the pain. It was too big. It didn't fit anywhere. So I yelled. I threw things. I scared people away before they could leave me first, because everyone always leaves." A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the light like a jewel, but she didn't wipe it away. Her eyes found Clara's, steady and kind. "Then she came, and she didn't leave, even when I screamed, even when I tried to make her hate me. She said I wasn't bad, just hurting, and that hurting people don't need to be fixed, they need to be understood." Her voice broke then, but she pushed through it. "My dad tries too. He's learning how to be here again. I know he's scared, but so am I. We're both trying." Lila lifted the snow globe high enough for the lights to catch it. Inside, the ballerina turned slowly, surrounded by glittering flakes. This was my mom's. When I hold it, I remember how she used to laugh, how she said I was brave even when I didn't feel like it. I broke a lot of things after she died, but I never broke this, because I still want to believe in something that stays. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Even the cameras seemed to pause. In the back row, a quiet sob, a teacher from another class wiping her eyes. Lila lowered the snow globe, her chin trembling. So if you're asking if I'm dangerous, I'm not. I'm just someone who misses her mom, and I'm trying to believe in love again. The silence that followed was not cold. It was reverent, heavy, holy. When Lila sat down, Ethan pressed his hand over his face, tears slipping through his fingers. Clara's own eyes glistened, but she smiled, the kind of smile that holds 1,000 unspoken prayers. The chairwoman cleared her throat, her voice catching. "Ms. Donovan," she said softly, "thank you for your honesty. You've shown more courage today than most adults ever do." Ms. Hart closed her file slowly. "I see no reason for further hearings," she said. "This family isn't broken. It's healing." And just like that, the cameras, the headlines, the noise, all of it shifted. The world that had come to witness a spectacle instead saw a miracle. A little girl who dared to turn her pain into truth. The morning after the hearing, sunlight poured into the Donovan mansion like forgiveness. For the first time in months, no reporters waited at the gate. No headlines screamed her name. The world had turned its gaze elsewhere, leaving behind the quiet. The kind of quiet that felt like breathing after too long underwater. At the kitchen table, Lila Donovan sat in her pajamas, her hair tangled, her smile small but real. The snow globe rested beside her plate, and this time her pancakes weren't going cold. Across from her, Clara Reed sipped tea, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Ethan Donovan leaned on the counter, his sleeves rolled up, watching them both as if afraid to blink and break the spell. "Can I go back to school today?" Lila asked suddenly. Her tone was cautious, uncertain, a child testing the strength of her own hope. Ethan hesitated. "You don't have to, not yet. We can wait." "No," Lila interrupted softly. "I want to. I don't want to hide anymore." Clara's eyes met Ethan's. She nodded. "Then we'll take her." By mid-morning, the halls of St. Aldan Academy buzzed with whispers as Lila walked through the doors. Some students stared, others looked away, guilt mixing with curiosity. The same classmates who had once feared her now didn't know what to do with her silence. She reached her locker and found a note taped to it. In careful handwriting, it read, "You were brave yesterday. I miss my mom too." Lila froze, her fingers trembling as she pulled the paper free. She turned to see a small girl standing nearby, clutching her backpack. 2 long braids framed her shy face. "My mom died last year," the girl said quietly. Lila blinked, her throat tightening. "It hurts, doesn't it?" The girl nodded. "Do you want to sit with me at lunch?" Lila asked. A slow smile spread across the girl's face. "Yeah, I'd like that." And just like that, the whispering stopped. Something shifted, a ripple of understanding too quiet for the tabloids to notice, but loud enough to reach the heart of every watching child. That evening, the house was alive again, with sound, real human sound. Clara helped Lila with homework at the table, while Ethan cooked, burning the garlic twice but pretending he didn't notice. The 3 of them ate together under the warm glow of the chandelier that had once hung above arguments and silence. When dinner ended, Lila tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Can we watch a movie?" He smiled, startled. "A movie? You never want to." "I do tonight, but only if Clara stays too." "I think we can manage that," Clara replied, laughing. They ended up huddled on the couch, wrapped in blankets, a forgotten bowl of popcorn between them. When the credits rolled, Lila's head had found its place on her father's shoulder. She didn't fight the closeness this time. Ethan looked over at Clara. For the first time in 6 months, his eyes didn't look like the eyes of a man drowning. He mouthed a single word. "Thank you." She shook her head. "Don't thank me, just stay." Later that night, after Lila had gone to bed, Ethan lingered by her door. Inside, she slept peacefully, the snow globe on her nightstand catching the faint shimmer of the moonlight. The ballerina inside turned slowly, forever dancing. He whispered to the stillness, "You'd be proud of her, Amelia." Then, after a long breath, he added, "And I'm learning how to be proud of me, too." Down the hall, Clara watched from the shadows, not intruding, just bearing witness to something sacred, the moment a father found his way back to his child. The mansion, once a monument to loss, now pulsed softly with life again, laughter, warmth, and the quiet rhythm of healing. Outside, spring was coming. Inside, it already had. Spring had draped the Donovan estate in color. The gardens, once forgotten and overgrown, now hummed with life. The roses climbing again, the lilies bending toward the sun as if they too were learning how to rise after a long winter. It was here, among the soft hum of bees and the scent of damp earth, that Ethan Donovan found himself one evening, standing where his wife once planted the first seeds of beauty in their home. The last time he had come here, the ground had felt like a grave. Tonight, it felt like a beginning. He heard the soft click of shoes behind him. Clara Reed stepped into view, her curls catching the last rays of daylight. She held a small basket of tools, dirt smudged on her fingers, unbothered by the contrast between her simple presence and the world of privilege surrounding her. "I didn't think anyone came out here anymore," she said. Ethan turned, smiling faintly. "I didn't, for months. I couldn't." He knelt, brushing away dead leaves from a rose stem that somehow still clung to life. "Amelia planted these. She said roses were stubborn, that they grow back no matter how many times you cut them down." Clara crouched beside him. "Sounds like your daughter." That made him laugh, a quiet, broken sound that still managed to warm the air. "Yeah, she's got her mother's heart and my temper. God help her." They worked in silence for a while, side by side, pulling weeds, trimming stems, the slow rhythm of hands and earth filling the spaces where grief used to echo. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice low. "You know, I used to think money could fix anything. That if I just worked hard enough, built high enough, I could keep the world from falling apart." He paused, fingers tracing the edge of a rose petal. "But it did, and all I knew how to do was build walls higher." Clara set down her trowel. "You're not alone in that. Some of us build silence instead of walls. Either way, it keeps love out." He looked up at her then, really looked. The faint lines near her eyes, the calm strength behind them, the history that lived in her voice when she spoke of loss as if it were an old friend. "You didn't just save my daughter, you saved me." Clara shook her head, brushing soil from her palms. "I didn't save anyone. I just stayed. That's what she needed. That's what you needed." He stepped closer, his voice softer now. "And what do you need, Clara?" For a heartbeat, she didn't answer. The garden held its breath. Then she smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "Maybe I've found it." Something in his chest shifted, fragile and new, not the wild ache of grief, but the slow, tentative hum of hope. He reached for her hand. The touch was simple, unplanned, but it felt like a promise neither of them needed to speak aloud. From an upstairs window, Lila peeked through the curtains, her snow globe clutched in both hands. She didn't understand everything happening in the garden below, but she knew enough. Her father was laughing again. Clara was smiling. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. She pressed the snow globe to her chest and whispered, "She'd like her, Mom. You'd like her." The wind brushed through the trees, as if answering back. Below, the two adults stood beneath the growing roses, surrounded by earth, memory, and second chances. The garden that had once symbolized loss now bloomed with quiet redemption. And for the first time, Ethan didn't look up at the sky to find what he'd lost. He looked beside him, at what had stayed. Morning light spilled through the tall windows, soft and golden, touching everything it met. The polished wood floors, the piano that hadn't been played in months, the framed photos along the wall. For once, the Donovan mansion didn't feel like a monument to loss. It felt alive. In the kitchen, laughter echoed. Lila sat at the counter, her hair a messy halo around her face as she wrote in a notebook, the snow globe perched beside her like an old friend. Clara was making breakfast, humming under her breath, while Ethan tried, and failed, to keep the pancakes from burning. "You're supposed to flip them, not fold them," Clara teased, trying not to laugh. "I'm a businessman, not a chef," Ethan protested, shaking his head as smoke curled from the pan. Lila giggled. "Mom used to say that too." The room went quiet for a heartbeat. Then Lila added softly, "But she burned them worse." Ethan looked at her, not with sorrow, but with tenderness. "Then I guess I'm just keeping the tradition alive." Clara smiled, her eyes shining. In that moment, everything, the grief, the fear, the noise of the outside world, faded into the background. This was what healing looked like. Messy, warm, real. Later that afternoon, the three of them walked through the garden. The roses had begun to open fully, their petals the color of sunrise. Lila skipped ahead, her laughter chasing the wind. "Clara," she called, "come see." Clara jogged to where Lila knelt by a small sprout breaking through the soil. "It's growing," Lila whispered, eyes wide. "It is," Clara said, "just like you." Ethan watched from a few steps behind, his heart full. "You've done something I couldn't," he said quietly, when Clara returned to his side. She shook her head. "No, Ethan, you did. You chose to stay. That's what changed everything." He looked down at her, sunlight catching in his eyes. "Maybe, but I wouldn't have known how without you." Clara's lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. "Then we both learned." They stood there in the garden, side by side, two people who had once been strangers, now bound by the fragile, beautiful work of rebuilding a family. That evening, as twilight settled, Lila sat at her desk, a sheet of paper before her. She wrote in careful, looping letters, "Dear Mom, I miss you, but I'm not sad all the time anymore. Daddy laughs again. Clara reads me stories. I still have your snow globe. It's safe. I think you'd like her, and I think you'd be proud of me. Love, Lila." She folded the letter, placed it inside the snow globe's base where the music key once was, and set it back on the nightstand. The ballerina inside twirled softly as the flakes drifted down. Downstairs, Ethan sat by the piano. His fingers hesitated over the keys, rusty and unsure. Clara joined him quietly, taking the bench beside him. "I didn't know you played," she said. "I used to," he murmured. "Before." "Then play," she whispered. "Not for the past, for right now." He did. The first notes were uncertain, trembling, but as he played, the melody found its courage. It was the same song Amelia used to hum when Lila was a baby, now softer, slower, like memory remade into peace. From upstairs, Lila listened, eyes closed, the music wrapping around her like a promise. No more leaving, no more silence, only presence. When the final note faded, Ethan looked at Clara. "You stayed," he said simply. She smiled. "I told her I would." He reached for her hand. She let him. For the first time in 6 months, the house wasn't grieving anymore. It was breathing. And though the world outside still whispered, the Donovan family no longer cared. Their story wasn't about scandal or loss or wealth. It was about love. Quiet, imperfect, enduring. That night, as moonlight washed over the estate, Lila whispered into the dark, "I'm not broken. I'm brave." And somewhere deep in her dreaming heart, her mother's voice seemed to answer, carried on the soft hum of memory. "You always were." Spring melted gently into summer, and the Donovan estate no longer stood as a fortress on the hill. It breathed like a home. The echoes that once haunted the halls had softened into music, laughter, and the quiet hum of life moving forward. At St. Aldan Academy, the children no longer whispered when Lila Donovan passed. They waved, smiled, sat beside her at lunch. She had become something unexpected. Not the girl from the headlines, but the girl with the kind eyes who listened when others were sad. One afternoon, her teacher stood before the class and announced, "Today, we'll share our end-of-term essays. The theme is, What I've Learned This Year." When it was her turn, Lila walked to the front. She held her snow globe tightly, the glass warm from her touch. The room fell silent. She began softly. "This is a story about a girl who thought she was broken." Her classmates leaned forward. "She shouted a lot. She scared people. She thought if she made everyone leave first, it wouldn't hurt so much when they did." Lila smiled faintly, her voice steadier now. "But then someone came who didn't leave. She stayed. She listened. She showed the girl that being angry didn't mean being bad. It meant being hurt. And that love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It just finds new ways to stay." She lifted the snow globe, letting the sunlight catch the glittering flakes inside. "So I learned that I'm not broken. I'm just learning how to love again. And sometimes," she added with a tiny, brave smile, "that's the same thing." When she finished, the room was quiet for a heartbeat, then filled with applause. Not polite applause, real, teary, human applause. From the back of the room, Ethan and Clara stood together, hands intertwined. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. That evening, as the sun set over the garden, Lila placed the snow globe beneath the rose bush that had bloomed again. "For you, Mom. It's safe now." She turned back toward the house, where Clara was setting the dinner table and Ethan was burning garlic again. The lights through the windows glowed golden against the dusk, imperfect, ordinary, beautiful. The wind brushed her hair like a mother's hand. And for the first time in a long time, Lila didn't wish for the past to return. She simply smiled and walked inside, where love was waiting. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't to survive alone, but to stay, to heal, and to love again.